you can't predict some of this stuff.
Yeah.
What you can do, you can prepare.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, I'm excited to have Roger King. Roger, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm outstanding. How are you, Todd?
I am doing excellent, and we had the pleasure of talking prior to hitting the record button. Roger lives in Puerto Rico right now, originally from the States, grew up in Cincinnati, and then moved like everywhere all over the U.S., and now is transplanted into Puerto Rico. So
Yeah.
super awesome, amazing. And, that's one of the joys of being an entrepreneur is you can have that flexibility, and being a real estate investor like Roger is, you get that flexibility. He's able to run and operate properties all over the country and be in Puerto Rico in paradise every single day for the last, what, well, you said a year and a half or so.
Year and a half. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So, a little bit about Roger. He's been in the industry for over 27 years. We're going to talk a bit about that, Roger, about your journey through the years, because obviously we're in a weird time right now.
Yeah.
And his portfolio currently valued over 50 million. Just kind of a great journey, and a lot of different experience, a lot of property flips, ground up development, luxury
Yeah.
homes, apartment buildings, mobile home parks, and so on. So, Roger, with that said, give our listeners a bit more about your background, and then we're going to dive in.
Yeah, sure. Hey, and thank you, Todd, for having me. I appreciate being here and getting to experience, the what everybody else has gotten to. I guess you're over 600 episodes, and
Yeah.
I'm honored that you would allow me to come on as well. I started life as a musician, in huge dreams of becoming a famous rock star.
What was your
And
instrument of choice, or was it a
I
singer?
I'm a drummer,
You're a drummer.
although, yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be a singer, but just
Yeah.
never, it takes a certain personality type to get up in front of everybody. I had, for decades, the curtain of the drum
Yeah.
set in front of me, and the comfort blanket. So, but I loved it. I still love it. I still play. I still have a drum set upstairs. I still own 12 drum sets, but unlike many of my friends that I grew up with and went to college with, I realized that it wasn't my path to tour the world, playing in front of millions of people. But I have another skill set, and that's talking to people and understanding how to buy and sell real estate and what makes a good investment. And it's taken me a little bit of time to kind of figure those things out. But I think if I could do it, I know that a lot of people can do it. Anybody really, if they put their mind to it, they can put a few of these pieces of the puzzle together, sort it out, and do it. And so that's kind of my history. And when I got into real estate investing, I was fortunate enough to have a mentor, my father, who had been in it for about 15 years at that point. And I really got to understand how to go buy and fix and flip properties and contracts and do lease options and use trusts and all that kind of stuff.
So what you've done a lot of different things. Has there been like a niche that you've focused on, or has it kind of evolved through the years?
Oh, it's always evolving. I mean, it's evolving today. I see at various points in the market cycle where fix and flip is fantastic, where wholesaling is fantastic, where long-term holds are fantastic. We see today, right now, we've got some funky things going on with multifamily. And that's because 4 or 5 years ago, people got into loans that they never thought would recast into these, 7, 8% interest rates.
Right.
And now what do they do? So if you know some of what's gone in the past, you can sort of pre-plan or at least have a vision of this may or may not happen. And if
Yeah.
this does happen, what can I pivot to? Or how do I restructure things so that I don't lose everything like a lot of people did in 2008,
Yep.
2009. So I think it takes a lot of kind of understanding of history, repeating of market cycles, even if some of those cycles are really long drawn out. So I'm looking at, where's the next, downturn, where's the next upturn, what are the opportunities involved in each of those parts of the market cycle.
If my math serves me correctly, you said we said 27 years about. So that means you started investing around 1996 ish.
Yeah,
You've seen some stuff.
yeah, definitely.
96. I mean, boy, from 92 to 98, probably the real estate market was just straight flat line, no increase in value or very little.
Yeah.
To then skyrocketing in value up until really 2006 ish.
Hmm.
Probably a couple, maybe a few bumps along the way. The .com, I think, created a little bit of a bump, but for the
Yeah.
most part. And then obviously we all know what happened from there, crash and then the latest boom and now potentially bust or at least flatlining, depending on
Yeah.
what you're in. If you're in residential, flatlining. If you're in commercial, again, we're seeing, multifamily. I'm in multifamily. We're seeing 20%, sometimes larger, price declines. Office is
Yeah.
seeing uh, even worse.
Yeah.
So anyways, you've seen a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Um, Take us through kind of maybe some of your experiences with those cycles. And I guess really what I want to know from you, beyond some of these experiences, is what have you learned from cycles? Like, what's the take home that you can give to our audience about these market cycles?
Sure. Well, I think it's a really important question and topic, not just for a discussion, but for continual
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah. Cause this is a big, yeah, we could talk for days about this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that people should be pondering this, if not daily, at least monthly, and assessing. You know, my father had started in 1980. So that's
Mm.
where it all began for me.
So you have some
Sort of,
experience even prior to that, watching him and
yeah.
his path.
Yeah. Oh, a lot. I mean, I remember sitting in the car with my mom and my sister, and I think we were going somewhere and 1980. So I was probably 12, 13 or so.
Mm.
And he comes out of some office in Sarasota, Bradenton. I can't even remember where it was. And came out with a check with like $18,000,
Mm.
which, at that point, he'd had a stone installation business, put it on the front of houses or fireplaces. And then it transitioned into a stucco business. And then suddenly he walks out with this massive check because he learned how to flip a contract.
Mm.
And his lights went off and my lights went off. And, we had a party that weekend. It was a blast, and it changed how not only he saw the world, but we saw the world. And you fast forward through, 1986, and I graduated high school. And at that point, he'd probably amassed 40 homes or so in a portfolio where he bought them, on land contracts and then would resell them on land contracts.
Mm.
And at that point, the Reagan era, they changed some tax laws, a capital gain tax law of, I think, the Tax Reform Act of 87.
Yep.
And essentially what happened is they said, look, if you sell a property this way, you have earned a capital gain and you now owe the taxes on it, even if you haven't realized that capital gain.
Right.
And that shook him to the core, and it shook us. And it became one of those things where he lost uh, essentially everything and had to start over because, you know, the IRS is like, you've got to pay all this money. And he's like, I didn't get any of the money.
Yep.
So that right there showed me, and is really clearly done with what's happening, you know, in the last 2 years with interest rates. We can't predict what a government is going to do or what the Fed is going to do. We just, I mean, some of us can, but, you know, guys like you and I, we have
Well,
things in the background,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. And even the people that quote unquote can predict it are wrong. They're always wrong. I mean, nobody predicted what happened.
Right.
Some people said interest rates are going to go higher than what the general market said, but
Yeah.
they were wrong. The forward looking curve is always wrong.
Yeah. I mean, so really, even if everybody's wrong, it doesn't matter if you're really super smart, intelligent, you know, you've got a 230 IQ, you can't predict some of this stuff.
Yeah.
What you can do, and my lesson, big lesson from all that was you can prepare and have potentials. What can you do if this happens? What else can you do if that happens? And how do you, you know, how do you organize your portfolio and your business to make those pivots? If you can, if you need to, you know, Tony Robbins talks about this guy back in Vegas, you know, who made, you know, 250 million. And then, you know, he's like, I'm going to turn this into $1 billion or whatever. And then, you know, Tony's like, you just take some of the money off the table, take 30 million off the table and just put it on the side. And the guy's like, do you know how much money I can make with $30 million, Tony? And then he grows it to $1 billion. And Tony's like, take some money off the table, take just 100 million off the table. The guy's like, you know what I can make with that? And then lo and behold, you know, 2 years later, he's lost everything.
Yeah.
You fast forward 10 years, he's still never recovered. So the idea of your ego taking over or your confidence taking over, you need to prepare for the unknown. And, you know, that's really one of the biggest lessons I know about market cycles. You can't predict, but you can prepare.
I think that's a huge takeaway, right? You can't, you're never going to predict this stuff. You can run through every scenario and
Yeah.
you're probably not going to have the answer to what's going to happen next. Okay. But you can prepare for it, and you can prepare for the scenarios enough to where when that black swan happens, and the black swans events happen every 5 to 7, maybe 10 years at the most. Okay. We've had two now over the last, 3 years. So you had COVID, and now you've got interest rates. Those are black swan events that nobody predicted COVID, right? And very few, if any, predicted where interest rates truly went. I mean, a lot of people said they were going to go up, but nobody said they're going to go up where they were. But quite frankly, most people said they can't go up that high because the government can't afford for it to go up that high. They'll literally bankrupt themselves, so they can't do it. Well, okay, logic says you're right, and so we're not going to account for it. But if you didn't account for it, now you're sitting here going, crap, I didn't take any chips off the table, and now I'm screwed, right?
Yeah.
And so we can't predict these black swan events, but you can prepare for them. And I think the other thing too, though, is understanding that you can't let that fear of the black swan event cripple you from moving forward. So be prepared, be smart, but don't let it cripple you and say, oh, something bad's going to happen. I got to be super, super careful. It's still about taking risks.
What did you think in January, February, March, right as COVID was starting to process, and then moving into, say, June? of, 2020 when COVID hit, what was your thought of what's going to happen to the housing market? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were all screwed. I thought
Totally.
I told my wife, so here's I had two properties that we just got done remodeling. These are a total of 204 units. Just got done with the well, we still had some units to remodel, but we got done, I think, with like it was like 48 units total that we just
Wow.
remodeled and we were just bringing to market. And I'm
Right.
like, crap. Like, what am I going to
Yeah.
do? The world just shut down, and I got all
Yeah.
these units, and the government telling people they don't have to pay their rent and all this
Mm.
stuff. And I'm like, I'm screwed. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. I literally told my wife, I said, it's good. Hey, this could get really rough really quick, and I don't know
Yeah.
what we're gonna do. And
Yeah.
I said, we're gonna pray about this, and we're gonna make it through together.
Put
And
your seatbelt on, honey.
right.
Yeah.
And happily that didn't happen. People still paid their rent
Yeah.
because they didn't have
Yeah.
to, right? Nobody
Right.
had to pay their rent. But what's
Yeah.
amazing, and this like gave me a I guess just like people are actually pretty good people. Like people are good. Like that's
Yeah.
amazing because they didn't have to pay, but they paid. And a few people didn't, right? And some people it
Sure.
was because of hardships. A few people is because they just aren't good people. But for the
Right.
most
Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
95% of our residents still paid their rent, actually probably even
Right.
higher than that.
Yeah.
Um, so it's still it worked out. And we got those units all rented. We were 90% occupied by like
Yeah.
July. So
Wow. What, and did you think that it was like the impetus? My thought at the time was like, this is it. We've been waiting for the market to crash, and here we are.
yeah,
This is the straw that breaks the camel's back. And then, you fast forward to November, and like
yeah.
everything is exploding.
Yeah, right, right. It was, yeah,
How does this
it's an,
math work?
yeah, exactly. It was an odd thing and it worked backwards. It was
Yeah.
almost the black swan event that you were waiting for
Right.
destruction, and it ended up being the opposite as
Yeah.
far as real estate went. It was the black swan event that made real estate go up faster, quicker, and higher than it's ever gone before. It was like,
Yeah.
you know, just putting pouring gasoline on a fire. It was unreal.
It really is. And here in Puerto Rico, I was watching, some properties, and a house that was selling for $5 million, beautiful home, is now, I think at its highest was 17 million
Mm, wow.
a year ago.
Wow.
And you're just like, how does that happen in 2.5 years?
Yeah. That's
Well,
amazing.
demand, of course, location. So
Location.
I'm how can you predict?
Yeah.
It's not that I'm stupid because I didn't see that prices were going to go through the roof. It's not because of anything not paying attention. It's
Yeah.
because there's other factors that you just can't anticipate, such as remote work becomes the norm.
Right. Right. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, Puerto Rico is a perfect example. I've been wanting to buy a place in the mountains. I love to ski. So I've been wanting to, well, prices there just
Yeah.
absolutely skyrocketed. Anything
Yeah.
close to a ski resort, it's tripled, quadrupled, maybe even more in price. And it's like, well, I guess I'm not going to buy there. But
Right.
how'd you couldn't have predicted that.
Yeah.
Yeah, in hindsight, it's easy, by the way. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah. Um, Roger, what do you like looking at today's market? What are
Hmm.
you excited about? And what are you cautious about, or maybe concerned cautious about?
Well, so I think that caution is a factor of season of life. In large part, I'll be 56 in a couple of weeks, and preservation is becoming more important to me as
Mm,
opposed to explosive growth. So,
sure.
what am I getting more cautious of? Obviously, my personal time, I don't have the desire to work for 15 hours a day like I did when I was 35. You know, maybe you're experiencing some of that. Maybe some of your listeners can understand that if your um, ability to regenerate lost capital is easier when you're younger. Uh, that's been important to me this last year. I don't know what happened when I turned 55, but the couple of weeks prior and a few weeks after, it just really sort of reset a bunch of different things in my brain. I don't know why. Maybe I do know why. But uh, so I'm excited about kind of what I know about where things might go, what
Mm.
things might happen. And I'm excited to have been around enough scenarios and enough really smart people, and more every day, people giving me this little bit of information over there, or that little bit of information, me putting that into, the hopper and kind of putting it all together and just seeing what is going to happen in the housing market. There's a lot of chatter today. Today is what, the December 15th. There's a lot of chatter today about people um, being able to get into um, the properties now that the interest rates are going to go down. The Fed
Yep.
announced, was it yesterday, that the lending is the interest rates are going to go down. So that's going to explode, the buying power of people.
Yeah.
So the prices are going to go up, and I mean, all these different uh, hypotheses of what is about to happen. Some of that is exciting to me. Some of it is like, well,
Right.
maybe that's going to happen.
Yep.
Maybe people just say, you know what, I don't want to do much of anything right now. I'm gonna wait this one out as well. And
Yeah.
I'm not building my world around those types of hypotheses. I'm building, what can I get? How can we improve it? And how can it start generating cash either on day one or day 181? You know, and just building those slower cash flows and still building in one or two bigger chunks, fixing and flipping a house, or developing a house, building a luxury home. I just finished one of those, and it took a year longer than I wanted. The contractor just didn't finish it on time. So how do
That
I?
was just a product of a contractor that was taking too long, or what? How does something like
Yeah.
that happen?
Well, you know, um, there's several factors, and I don't want to dive too much into it until some of it's resolved.
Sure.
And I'm thinking that some of that's going to get resolved through the legal channels over the next 6 months.
Yeah.
But the property finally got finished
Yeah.
um, several weeks ago, um, and it was just one of those things where it was mismanaged,
Mm.
and even with skill and experience, you can't predict when the lumber is going to show up,
Yeah.
or when the tile gets delivered, or if as I don't know if you're into much construction. I'm guessing you are with 3,000 units. We have a labor shortage in the construction
Yeah.
industry, and that just drags everything out. And so when somebody says, look, I know I can get this project done in X number of days, and it takes you 10 times the amount, because of
Yeah.
labor, is it labor or is it mismanagement?
Both.
And yeah, absolutely.
Both. Yeah. Yeah. You can't have you can't have it just be a labor issue. It's just it's definitely a mismanagement issue as well.
Yeah.
Um, Material shortage. Sure, it's all kinds of excuses. We had, Roger, by the way, you talk about that. You say you got delayed a year. We got delayed over a year and a half um, on a project, and we actually fairly recently finished it. but it was supposed to finish at the end of 2021. And this contractor, it's 122 unit renovation. This contractor just took forever. And it
Yeah.
was everything you said. Materials, cabinets were supposed to come, and 18 weeks later, the cabinets finally show up, and they show
Yeah.
up in pieces. And so we got to make new orders, and 10 weeks later, the rest of it shows up, and so on.
Right.
And there's all
Yeah.
kinds of excuses, and a lot of it's labor excuses. But a big part of it was mismanagement, both on the contractor's part, both on the project manager we hired, and on our part as well.
Yeah.
And so, you got to point fingers at yourself just as much as
Yeah.
you might want to point fingers at other people. But it was
Sure.
it's a disaster sometimes, and that's what's going to happen. It's tough to underwrite to that. But I think what's really important for the listeners to understand is when you think a project is going to take, um, you know, 6 months, you want to
Yeah.
make sure you add a nice big buffer to that. When you think a
Yeah.
project's going to cost you $100,000, make sure you put in a nice big buffer. Do you have buffers that you put in, and like a whatever percentage or an amount that you really like to adhere to that you found?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was always twice as much and twice as long, right?
Yeah.
And so I budgeted for twice as much. I budgeted for twice as long,
Yeah.
because, okay, so I'm not, I like to say how do I say it? I'm not as smart as I think I am. you
Yeah.
know, I mean, I think I'm smart. I think that I can see all of these different things, these permutations of how it may happen. And man, you're not going to be perfect.
Nope.
So if anybody, so any of your listeners, anybody paying attention to this knows if they've been into 3 or more real estate investments or deals or whatever they call it, they understand to a degree that it's not going to go the way
It's
they're
never.
thinking it is. The beginners, they think, no, I'm smart enough. I know how to do
Yeah.
it. I'm like, look, I started 27 years ago and I still don't get it all right.
Yep.
And that's okay.
Yep.
And you said a year and a half, and you know that you have to point the finger at yourself. Where I could have done it differently was I could have stayed in Palm Springs, and California is where this house is, and just been on site every single day. But what's more important to me? That's only one of my projects. I've got these mobile home parks scattered throughout the country. I've got this resort that I got into last year, So it's not my only thing. And for me, that's more critical to know that this is a small portion of my portfolio.
Sure.
And that's helped me to offset some of those concerns that I might have. Not offset them that they're not important, or I could just walk away from, $200,000 in profit on it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that's not my main focus and it's not my only source of income.
Yep.
And I think that, we have to pay attention to those balances of,
Right.
income versus negative income, if you will.
Yeah, and for you, it sounds like, look, I could go there and I could be boots on the ground, and that might help that project. But what damage is it going to do to my other projects? Right?
Yeah.
What's gonna suffer because of that? I think that's something you really have to think about. For us, I think the biggest thing that we should have done is fired the people that were in charge, right? We should have fired the contractor
Yeah.
way sooner. We eventually did fire them, but
Oh, wow.
way too late.
Yeah.
We should have fired them. We should have fired the project management company.
Mm.
Um, but we didn't. And because you're listening to the promises, and sometimes that's, I don't know if you deal with this, I'm sure you do. You get people that tell you they're going to do something, and they tell you they're going to correct things, and you listen
Yeah.
and you pay attention and you say, okay, and you give them that second chance. And I think for me, that it comes from, and maybe I haven't figured it out because I make this mistake too often, but I think it comes from a couple places, a place of fear a fear if I do fire them that we won't find the right person to take over and we'll lose a lot more time and money. And then it
Mhm.
comes from, I think, a place of a almost too much trust in people. Like if
Mm.
somebody says they're going to do something, they're of course they're going to do it. They told me they were,
Mm.
and I allow that person to continue to disappoint over and over and over again. I don't know. Are you the same? Do you have that?
Oh, yeah, completely. I flew to Palm Springs. So flying from Puerto Rico to Palm Springs is an entire day, right? And I flew there, gosh, it must have been the end of August. And he's like, I just need, 2 more weeks. I'm like, I told you beginning August 1, you needed to be done no later than August 30th. He goes, I just need 2 more weeks. I'm like, okay. So I flew back out there 2 weeks later, and it was still a mess. Like it still wasn't done. And it was like one of those things where, okay, I listened to him again. We're already 8 months past due
Yeah.
on this, and I'll come back. So I'm coming back in 2 more weeks. So I literally went to Palm Springs, was it 3 times in 7 weeks, which
Mm.
is brutal traveling,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it still didn't get done.
So
And
frustrating.
it just, at what point do you actually fire the guy? Do
Yeah.
you move that up in your timeline? Is it you being a nice guy and allowing somebody to take advantage of you? I think there's some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I
You know.
think you should have fired him. And I think you should have fired him probably earlier than you did. But
Yeah.
again, it's difficult to make that choice. For me, it
Yeah.
is a reoccurring theme in my probably one of my weaknesses is firing people and allowing them to hang around far too long. And it is one of my weaknesses that I'm trying to work on, but I probably have to just hire somebody to fire people.
So, so if you were coaching me, how would you coach
Yeah.
me on that? Tell me, you know, tell me your process of that, and then maybe it applies to you.
Yeah. So look, if I were to coach you on your project, you mean?
Yeah. On firing this guy.
Yeah. So look, if you were telling me about this project and what was going on, I mean, I would have to see the whole context of the project.
Sure.
But for this short conversation that we're talking about, if you're telling me about this and I'm mentoring you and I'm listening to what you're saying and this is continuing to get delayed, first of all, we're asking questions like, Roger, why is this getting delayed again? That guy, he told you that he was going to be at this, uh, you know, point in time he was going to be done with X, Y, and Z, and he's not.
Yeah.
But he told you the same thing the last time. Why aren't we there? And you give me your excuses or your reasons for it, and we have to go. Okay, Roger, we can't just keep pushing this project off. What I need you to do is go out there and I need you to start looking for other contractors that can finish the project and start getting bids. And I need you to secure 3 to 5 bids on this project and fire this guy. And by the way, don't need to wait until you have the next contractor secured, because here's what it just continues to get delayed and you continue to owe this guy money and the relationship is just going to sour and it's not worth it. I've been there and I've done it.
Yeah.
And fire him and walk away and move on to the next contractor. It feels like it's going to delay the project. It feels like it's going to cost you more money, and it might cost you more money, but it will get this project done and it will not delay it any further. And time is value. Time is money, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think right. I'm giving myself a coaching lesson. I'm giving you a coaching lesson, right?
Yeah. That's
And
why I
it's just
asked it.
but it's easier said than done. And I think that's
Yeah.
the difficult part is you know it in your heart that you should probably fire this person, but you're also, again, it's that fear and it's that I think most people generally have a good heart and they don't want to fire somebody. I
Yeah.
don't want to get fired, so I know I don't want to fire people.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a challenging thing. Maybe you just got to find somebody that you hire that just doesn't have feelings.
Let's do that for each other from now on, okay?
Yeah, right.
If I run into that situation, I'm calling you up. Hey Todd, I'm ready to enlist you to fire this guy, and you call me up and you say, Roger, I need you to let go of this guy for me. And then that way, we don't have to worry about it. I
Well, that
think
brings
that
us to a great point, Roger, because how valuable are mentors in your life?
uh, huge,
A-
huge.
And and for me, I've had some mentors that have added so much value. Had
Mm,
had I asked those questions, I probably would have gotten better answers, right? And so think about who you're surrounding yourself with too. And I think
yeah,
you're doing some mentoring now. I don't feel
yeah,
like I know you are. Um,
yeah.
and, and what? So let's talk quick about that. Like, why did you
Sure.
decide to do this? You've been successful in your career. Why did
Mhm.
you decide you're going to start doing this?
What it's something that I've kind of always done. People always have asked me, as I'm sure every active investor knows, people are always asking, hey, how do I do this? Hey, how do I do that? And I love that process.
Mhm.
I am a natural like educator. I want to teach people, I want to share with people, I want to give, and I just want to help.
Yeah.
And I was at a Tony Robbins event 4.5 years ago, Business Mastery in Las Vegas. And, it finally clicked. I love real estate investing, and I'm not getting some of my 6 human needs met. I don't know if you've ever done a Tony event, but he talks about the 6 human needs. And one of those is contribution. And I don't feel like I've ever really been able to contribute
Mm.
as much as I've wanted to back to people, even though, yeah, we've hired hundreds of people and we built beautiful homes and we've done all of this stuff, and it's
Yeah.
impacted people positively. My juice is from having one-on-one conversations or one-on-five conversations of people and saying, hey, if you do this and if you put this house into a trust, here's what it'll, benefit your heirs. Or how do you structure, an investment better for you down the road? Those types of things have always given me a lot more juice and a lot more feelings of contribution, which helps me feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I've missed a lot of that feeling of fulfillment as an investor. And I couple that with my desire to educate and my sort of natural inclination for that. And that Tony Robbins event, I walked away and I'm like, I see it now. I'm finally understanding how do I put all of my personality, my experience, all of it together. And it's taken me literally 4 years to kind of get this thing up and running and launched and have the right team and the right business partner out of my world, and just a whole host of things. And finally launched this the real estate investing accelerator founders group just a few weeks ago. And
So somebody who's like, hey, I like this Roger. It
sure.
seems like a great guy. He's been experienced for 27 years, which is amazing. By the way, there's not many people that I talk to that are experienced for 27 plus years. What's really funny is actually I've done 3 interviews this week, and all 3 of them have had 25 plus years of experience, which is
Wow.
very rare, by the way.
Yeah.
I have interviewed a lot of people, and the vast majority of them have less than 15 years of experience. It's
Sure.
just how it is. So it's rare to find somebody in your position, and it's even more rare to find somebody in your position that is actually willing to mentor people. And so
Yeah.
that's, I think, a huge bonus. And I'm not necessarily trying to sell you. You're on this podcast, we're having a conversation. But
Yeah.
if someone does like what you say,
Yeah.
who's the ideal client for you?
Uh, I have a few, but being a real estate investor, I've learned that I have to start somewhere and focus on the one thing to begin with. So what I've decided to do is really start with beginning investors, people that want to start. A few months down the road after I've kind of crafted, the the program itself is built for sort of level 2, if you will, people that have already been investors who want to scale. But right now I'm focused on the people who want to start. They've not bought an investment and they want to know, what is step number 1?
Yeah.
What's step
How
number
do I get
2?
there?
How do I get to the closing of my first investment? That's who I'm targeting right now, because those people, man, if they get the right information and they start taking the right steps, they can really grow their portfolio these next few years.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I think that there's some tremendous opportunity right now, but they have to take the first steps, right?
Yeah, you have to take the first steps. And quite frankly, like, I think there's tremendous opportunity. And even if there isn't, you still have to learn. You still have to take the right steps.
Yeah.
There's real estate, there's a lot of timing in real estate, but there's also time in real estate that's important as well.
I
And I
love
think
that.
a lot of people try to time the market too much. And so
Mhm.
I would just suggest, if you're listening to this and you're just like, I do want to get started. And I'm not telling you to hire Roger or hire me or hire anybody else, right?
Yeah.
But I think the most important part is you got to get yourself educated and
Yeah.
you got to get yourself ready and prepared, because you won't get started if you never do that, right? And it's going to be, and then it's going to be not too late. That's a bad way to say it, because it's never too late, but you're going to miss the opportunities that were in front of you because you
Mhm.
weren't prepared and you weren't ready.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the corollary to that is that if you don't prepare and you still start, right? The leap before you look sort of thing, jumping into a lion's den doesn't do you any good either, because that can really delay
yeah.
your profitability.
Oh,
And
100%.
so, you know, just buying a house because, you can, doesn't necessarily mean it's the right house.
By the way,
So
even if you are educated and you do get ready to go, the first few deals aren't going to go exactly as you plan. In fact, the first 10 deals aren't going to go how you planned. And maybe even the first, 300 deals aren't going to go as you planned.
I'm
But
not sure I've seen any go as planned. Have you?
they never go as planned. But
They never
those
do.
first few dedeals are there's I mean, you got your training wheels on and
Yeah.
you're making mistakes, and
Yeah.
it just is that's how it is. But if you've got people that you've surrounded yourself with, if you've got
Mhm.
the education that you've put forth, and you've got the determination and the right mindset, you're gonna be fine, right?
Absolutely.
You're gonna still have bumps and bruises. That's okay.
Sure.
That's just part of the deal.
Yeah.
Um, Roger, what's a mistake that you have made? It can be in investing and whatever. What's a mistake that you've made in business, and how can you teach our listeners? We
Gosh.
talked about some
Um,
stuff already. So,
yeah, I think that there are two, but I'll focus on the one, is that my assumptions have killed me. Let's say it that way. I assume that this guy knows what he's doing and therefore will do what he's supposed to do. Or I trust that my bookkeeper is doing, setting up the books the right way, and I'm not checking to make sure that it's done right every month.
hmm,
Um, I'm I'm assuming that what the real estate agent is telling me about this particular market is good, but not checking it. Those assumptions, and all assumptions, need to be tempered, and you need to go through a process of asking yourself okay, so what if I'm wrong about this assumption?
yeah,
And maybe even the first question is this an assumption or is this a fact?
hmm, yeah,
And if it's an assumption, what might be wrong about the assumption? And if I'm making that assumption and it's wrong, what are my potential ways to get out of this?
hmm,
You know, and this kind of the thought process of how to evaluate how we're doing whatever we're doing. I think that's a really important thing. And that, is very esoteric. I get, I could tell you, how to price out, a multifamily, complex that's 260 units, based on a cap rate in, a tertiary market. But that's for a specific person. I think everybody has to start really looking at their assumptions.
Yep.
We're talking about, interest rates right now for the housing market. Okay, so we're all making assumptions. Well, the Fed's going to drop it 3 times. What if they only drop it once? What if they only drop it twice? Or what if they drop it 6 times? Yeah, what if they raise it? And then, we've put all of this other stuff into motion to buy or to sell or whatever, and they raise the rates. How do we, what if we're wrong? So I think that that's a major thing that has really impacted my investment philosophy over the last probably 5 years. Just really checking my assumptions.
Yeah, I mean,
is this contractor going to actually complete the project on time?
Is it going to take them a year longer?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that old saying, right? Trust but verify. It's you can look at somebody's assumptions, and I think you're right. First of all, are these facts or assumptions, and then do these assumptions even make any sense? And if you go, okay, these assumptions make sense, then we should have to verify these assumptions. Then we have to look at what we have had for our experiences, what other people around us have had, and go, okay, do these assumptions make sense? And even if they do make sense, okay, what can we do to safeguard against these assumptions not working out the way we planned? So love that.
Right. Yeah.
All right. We have to wrap up here. This has been a fun conversation. I'd love to keep going. I'm going to come to Puerto Rico, and we're gonna hang out. So absolutely. Roger, what's a favorite book that you can recommend to our listeners?
Gosh, literally everything by Tony Robbins. The Road Less
What's
Stupid.
one of his top books that you like?
Gosh, I mean, you start at the beginning, Unlimited Power. Then you Awaken the Giant Within. His newest book, Life Force? Phenomenal stuff on where the life health industry is headed. Printing of hearts in the next 10 years. That's crazy. But as far as like the business stuff and this idea of assumptions was really important to me and sort of discovered by Keith Cunningham. I'm not sure if you know who he is.
I've heard
phenomenal
thinker.
Him,
but what book do you remember?
Yeah, it's called The Road Less Stupid. Phenomenal book.
Stupid.
Yeah, I mean, he's
a great
just
title.
Brilliant thinker and businessman, and he lost, I don't know, $100 million when he was 35 and had to retool everything, and all of his assumptions and his idea of, assumptions was really impactful for me. So that's where I get some of that thinking and the line of questioning in his, he calls it thinking time. Brilliant stuff. I love that book. Keith J. Cunningham, The Road Less Stupid.
Love it. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Last question before we wrap up. What are your 3 pillars of wealth creation?
The 3 pillars of wealth creation. What a phenomenally difficult question.
I love it because I get so many different answers, and wealth means so many different things for everybody. So I love asking it and hearing what people come up with.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a compartmentalization type person. I'm a Capricorn, right? So I've got to put it into a certain bucket. Are we talking about life wealth? Are we talking about financial wealth? Are we talking spiritual wealth, right? So the idea is I'm going to, since it's a real estate investing, I'm going to focus on the wealth, financial wealth. I would definitely say that one of those has to be real estate investing. Right, globally speaking, and you can narrow your own choices.
Yep.
You and I buy single and multifamily commercial buildings. Some people buy and build skyscrapers, right? So it depends on where you are, what you're focused on. The other thing is the taxation. I think Tony Robbins has really sort of hipped me to the idea of we have to make sure that we're not foolishly overpaying on our taxes.
Yeah.
Which is a part of the reason I moved to Puerto Rico. It's not the full reason at all. I mean, I'm 40 feet from the water, and that is more critical to me than the taxes.
Yeah.
I could live anywhere in the States on a coast, and I would be much happier to pay more taxes if I had to move out of Puerto Rico. But I don't see myself ever not living on the ocean, which is part of my wealth strategy too. Where are we in our season of life? And what sort of things are you participating in to allow and to excite your happiness? Right. And I see that before I could go grind, and that I didn't mind working until, playing drums until 3 a.m., because I'm in my early 20s, and that was really cool. I didn't care about living on the ocean, but now being, 55, that's a really important thing for me. I just find that I can do all of the other things that I want now that I have a peaceful atmosphere. So for me, in terms of literal financial wealth creation, that helps me being on the water.
Love it.
So I think that environmental aspect. You mentioned buying a cabin in the mountains. That's part of it for you, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Roger, appreciate the conversation. This has been great. And I think the
Thank you.
listeners can take a lot out of this. So my challenge to the listeners is just to take one thing that you heard from this episode and apply it today. And don't wait, just apply it today. Take one thing. Roger, how can our listeners get in touch with you, learn more about what you got going on?
Yeah, I'm all over social media, of course. I've been really pushing, growing and expanding the reach that I have. If they want to just log into my website, go there. They can sign up for my newsletter. They can learn about the founders group, rogerking.com. It's pretty simple.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'm happy to have conversations with people. If they want to email me, roger@rogerking.com, or DM me through any of the social media places.
Awesome.
And make sure that they mention your name, either Pillars of Wealth or Todd. Todd sent me here, so I know where we're finding this.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Roger, we'll put that in the show notes. Again, appreciate you, and you have a fantastic rest of the day.
Hey, thank you so much, Todd. Same to you, man. And I appreciate your help.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.